Hello, my name is Carl Carpenter, and this is a short webinar on linking data to coaching. Essentially, it's basically a way um, intended for coaches to kind of utilize data in a way which obviously makes sense and is able to be applied to training and other scenarios. A bit of my background. I'm a former college soccer player in the U.S. And after I graduated college, I started working as a performance analyst, first for the University of Virginia, um, uh, for the U.S. Youth National Teams, the U17s, and I currently work as a tactical and video analyst for StatsBomb. Kind of a background, a little bit of my role is as a performance analyst for StatsBomb. I provide guidance and feedback and expertise in video platforms, so kind of linking a lot of our data that we provide at StatsBomb in a way which analysts and coaches can kind of use in a video context, um, and as well, basically making sense of data in a way which can be applied to training scenarios, which is essentially kind of what this webinar will be doing. Um, so essentially, what does it mean? What are the benefits? First off, it provides traditional coaching with objectivity and benchmarks. So KPIs are key performance indicators, essentially things of which you judge your team or individual players by. Using data and linking it to how you coach on the pitch in terms of traditional working on your attacking and defending, it helps assess the individual and the collective group and their growth and trends. And as well, it also helps coaches coach better. So if you're looking at training and you're just basically looking at how your players are performing with the naked eye, you can get a lot of false kind of pretenses that way. Um, while having some kind of data benchmarks, which, regardless of how sophisticated or unsophisticated they are, you'll basically be able to better assess how players are growing and how, if you need to tailor anything in terms of your coaching. As well as important in regards to contextualization. So it's very easy to become narrowly minded and focused. So if you have a good session or game, we're doing things right, which might not necessarily be the case. So the trend based analysis that I've mentioned here, it basically allows you to see how teams are growing and if you need to tweak anything going on. And they can be easily linked together in ways which I'll describe obviously later on. So how to do it? So one of the things that I've heard from coaches and I've worked with other people is there's a lot of fallacy in terms of your technology requirements. You don't need to have intensive video software or a huge data provider to actually provide you with the kind of information you need. You can just do it with a pen and paper. You just need a really good framework to work with, and I'll get into that. You also have to balance the collective with the individual. So regardless if you're working with top players at professional level or you're working with the foundation phase players, you have to be thinking about how can we both grow the team, i.e. win, which obviously the lower down and the younger you get is less important, and also improve players. And as well as what is of the utmost importance for you. So if you're coaching players to look to develop them and get them into higher age groups, or if you're, Pep Guardiola working for Manchester City, you need to kind of look at what is most important for you. Is it wins? Is it development? Is it, growing your, if you're having problems scoring goals, is it ways to kind of improve your players to score goals? Data outside of, creating training sessions which allow you to work on those things provides you with benchmarks. And as well as something I've done throughout my career as a performance analyst is creating and implementing a data culture without becoming too focused on it. You have to know of its limitations. Data isn't going to solve every single issue, nor is coaching by itself. You also have to become, like I said recently, the age group and level of player. If you're looking at, a U12 player and you're super hyper focused on their output, it's probably not the best use of your time or data itself. And you also have to provide consistency with the data. So if you want to work and put data into your coaching philosophy, you have to make sure that you're not just dropping it and pulling it out when it's necessary. You have to basically keep it a consistent thing so players are aware of the expectations they have on them. So essentially the game model, which is the benchmarking, the beginning of any kind of coach's workflow. So once you have your kind of your game model, regardless of this is obviously a very the example on the right is a very basic level of what it looks like. There's you can argue if there are four distinct phases. If you throw set pieces in there, it's five, but not to get too deep into kind of the coaching philosophy there. Um, how can the existing one be added to become data friendly? So looking at these things on the right, how can we use data in a way which helps us improve our game model offensively, in defensive transitions, in settled blocks of defensive transition and defensive attacking transition that way. How can we look at metrics and what metrics and kind of KPIs can we use which help us work on that. So if you're a team which likes to press high up the pitch, how can we find ways to kind of codify our game model and kind of put things on a hard example? You have to make sure the data is understandable. Obviously, it's linked to your existing lingo and your coaching terminology. I'll go to that in a second. You kind of have to use phrases which are constant buzzwords. So players, when they hear say a phrase when you're coaching or in a game, they'll basically kind of understand the expectations along with that. And then when you link it back to data, it's something that makes sense. So you're not using two different things, and they're unaware of the expectations and benchmarks they have. And that's kind of what I said here, is making sure that players understand the expectations. You don't want them to be sitting in their mind and when they're actually playing a game or when they're training to be highly focused on data and output. It's obviously not ideal. You just need to know that when you're working on coaching phrases and specific things that they understand the ramifications and benchmarks it provides. So they basically they are tuned into data without becoming paralyzed by the analysis. So here's kind of an example of of what I've liked to done throughout my career and when I've worked with coaches. So you essentially have what is said by the coach or yourself, what it means, obviously what the background, what the phrase means, and what it helps us do. So this is the starting point. This is where the game model side comes in. So when you say make the pitch big, first example here, in possession, make sure we are as wide as possible, making the opposition stretched. What does this allow us to do is basically play through the lines, make the opposition cover more ground, blah, blah, blah. That works for all sorts of things, whether it's, regardless of your game model. You just have to make sure that what is said over here is consistent and goes throughout. So you're constantly using the same phrases. So when you attack the seam, you keep on using that and you're consistent with that. As we go next, this is an example of a code window I've made in sports code, so the video analysis software. When you do that, once you have these kind of links and buzzwords of coaching, you can then link it to data. So make the times, making the pitch big. How many times do we switch play? That's a very basic metric. Switches per 90 is an example. Press up high to the pitch. How many times do we regain the final ball? Pressure regains. These are very distinct examples that don't require a lot of sophisticated software. You can just sit there with a pen and paper in hand, or if you are, benefited by, if you work for a club and you are able to actually have these kinds of these software to working with, you can kind of do that. So switches per 90. If you can see a steady growth in your times that you've done that throughout your games, your training sessions, you can understand that it's obviously something which has been improved upon. So if you start off and you have a training session where the first day you're working on good shooting areas, you're attacking final third work. This is the third example here. Shoot from good areas, basic XG. If you're seeing that you're consistently creating shots in central areas within the frame of the goal without defenders in front of the ball, blah blah blah, you'll see that that kind of coaching side of things is having an effect in the data, and you can show that to players and kind of have objective examples of that. And it's a very simple thing I've done through, I've worked and coached with goalkeepers. I've done some very bespoke metrics for them, and I've also worked with teams, obviously, and done things to help them in that regard. Another kind of thing I like to do, obviously, is if you can, and most clubs and regardless of the level you're at, have VO cameras, or even if parents are sitting there filming it on the sideline, you can link your data to video. Players nowadays are they don't want to know just what to do when they're actually doing things. They want to know why they're doing it. And I've always found that when you link your coaching to the data and then you go back to video as well, it is the best kind of teacher to kind of display things. Kids and even coaches like yourselves, you don't want to be looking at bar graphs when you're actually making things. So video is kind of the best tool case for this. They can, I put it here, they can basically see the metrics. So when you're going back here and you have these phrases of make the pitch big, you can see in the video what that means and what those metrics, which were kind of here, pressure regains per 90, using the press example again, you can basically see that in a version. So when they're actually doing things on the pitch, they know, okay, oh, that's what he means. And they can understand what the positive and negative data means. So if you're working on, to use another basic thing, if you're looking at XG, you're basically saying, okay, this is what good XG chances are. You show them good shots from the center of the goal. And then you can show them the downside of that. Okay, this is a bad shot, a shot from 30 yards, a shot from, an incredibly wide area. It's a very basic way to do that. And this is something that you can do without software or with software. Pen and paper, same sort of thing. And as I said, and I've kind of highlighted, it's the most natural way to link data seamlessly while coaching. You can sprinkle in your metrics and data alongside coaching points. So we were able to win back possession directly after using it, show a video clip, and this is the number that shows why. So yeah, these are my kind of the final thoughts. I kind of hope that it's obviously a short webinar, but to give you some kind of examples of how, as a coach, you can kind of detail and throw data into your processes. Obviously, when you're working with younger players, like I've said, you don't want to have them become highly focused on that. And as a coach, you don't want to lose what you're good at, which is actually coaching players. But having that kind of balance between the two is very important. You don't want to become too heavily swayed by, well, my coaching intuition says this, but the data says another thing, and vice versa. You need to make sure that you provide contextualization with everything. Also, tailor your data. Make it specific to your team and your needs. Make it hyper-focused to your game model, even if it's things which, on the surface, might not be, a metric like data providers like StatsBomb provide. It could be something that is, hyper-focused. I've done bespoke metrics where it's unforced turnovers. If we're trying to build up play and we're consistently giving the ball away, it's something that I like to kind of provide examples of, and you can link that to coaching as well. And of course, know your audience. The younger, the better, the less intensive it should be. I'm not going to sit in front of like this picture here and show a bunch of U13 players some pie graphs or charts that would basically tell them what they're doing wrong. I like to, of course, always make sure that I know who I'm working with, and also as well, if you're doing presentation techniques with players, and they're getting bored consistently by video, you can find other ways to sprinkle in more exciting things. And finally, be creative. Don't let the limitations of technology dissuade you. I've filmed games on an iPhone. I've filmed games with really heavy camera. You have to make sure that you go the extra mile to kind of provide this data, and it doesn't have to be incredibly sophisticated to kind of get some marginal gain in that sense. And of course, paralysis by analysis. No player wants to be just droned on by the information, and that's where coaching and making things fun, which you all, if you're a coach or an expert at, are really good at. So that is it. You can email me. My email's right here. If you have any questions, more than happy to take them, and I hope you enjoyed this quick little webinar about how to link data into your coaching and how to present it to players.